These etudes are illustrated. Specifically, the project was to explore the tonal and modal behavior of all the equal tunings of 13 through 24 notes, devise a notation compatible with the chord progressions, and write a composition in each tuning to illustrate the chord progressions and the practical application of the notation. Tunings that divide an octave in some other manner than into 12 equal parts are called microtonal. Microtonal music is as old as music itself. It has only recently become practical to explore tunings in any systematic way. Before the development of sophisticated miniaturized electronic devices, the process was too slow and inaccurate. Why compose music in the equal tunings of 13 through 24 notes, given the fact that some of them are decidedly out of tune and have previously been regarded as of little or no musical utility? In the first place, I have long suspected that theorists are off the mark in their rejection out of hand of any tuning that does not produce consonant triads. It also happens, quite by accident, that modern electronic music synthesizers have the capability of playing only in equal tunings, but the number of notes is not restricted to 12. But more important, certain aspects of chromatic harmony are associated exclusively with equal tunings. These include the behavior of a closed circle of fifths or other intervals, different equal divisions of the common intervals of diatonic harmony, and the capability of transposition of any musical passage into as many different registers as there are notes in the tuning. And finally, these etudes prove that equal tunings can produce expressively compelling progressions of hitherto alien harmonies and modes. In fact, all the tunings under investigation admit of modal arrangements such that modulations can be clearly perceived. The most challenging aspect of this entire study was the development of a notation which reveals the modal configurations inherent within each different tuning and which is compatible at the same time with a trained musician's habits. In each case, the 5-line staff is preserved and all octaves are written as we are accustomed to seeing them. Within each octave, the behavior of accidentals differs from tuning to tuning, and in some cases it was necessary to introduce up to 2 new symbols. Within this framework, all the etudes are completely written out with no improvisatory or aleatory elements whatever. The only workable medium for the realization of these etudes is a combination of electronic instruments, either in part-by-part synthesis with multiple track recording or eventually live electronic performance. I would love to hear someone else's interpretation of the score. Aside from their theoretically illustrative value, I intend for these etudes to stand upon their own merit as compositions. My purpose was to express what is inherent in the different tunings by the most attractive possible musical design. I have tried to discover the most musically appealing arrangements within each tuning, those chord progressions that will eventually become standard formulas as the tunings come into more widespread use. A set of 12 pieces in 12 different equal tunings cannot help but call to mind the well-tempered clavier of Johann Sebastian Bach. It is a very sobering proposition to be faced with the opportunity of trying to create a sequel to that work. At the beginning of this study, I did not dream of the vast musical possibilities inherent in the different equal tunings. It is my fervent hope to have found something that will inspire generations of composers to enrich the repertoire of expressive music, something that will give a truly progressive direction to the music of the future. The equal tuning of 16 notes is best thought of as being a combination of 4 intertwined diminished seventh chords. Since 12-note tuning may be regarded as a similar combination of 3 diminished seventh chords, it is plain that the 2 tunings have elements in common. But there are differences. For the 16-note triads, although recognizable, are too discordant to serve as the final harmony in cadences. But even so, keys may be established by successions of altered subdominant and dominant harmonies. This first etude is based mainly upon this property, and its fundamental consonant harmony is a minor triad with an added minor seventh. You have just heard an electronic etude composed in 16-note equal tuning. 18-note equal tuning also contains elements in common with 12-note tuning, since it is a combination of three intertwined whole tone scales. But the perfect fifths are so out of tune that even seventh chords are disturbingly discordant, and so the harmonic vocabulary of the etude is mainly altered chords, in which most notes are extracted from one whole tone scale with one or two others added. But even these harmonies are so piquantly discordant that they require elaborate overlays of parts to be acceptable. Here is the etude for 18-note equal tuning. That was an electronic microtonal etude written in 18-note equal tuning. The equal tuning of 21 notes contains relatively consonant major and minor triads, and consequently major and minor keys as well. The scale, however, is somewhat out of tune due to the impossibility of dividing a major third into two equal parts. The next etude is a suite in 4 short movements, each illustrating a different category of chromatic circular modulations. These modulations make 7 repetitions before returning to the initial harmony, proceeding either up or down by seconds, thirds, or fourths. The different movements exploit this feature using canonic ornamentation. The first makes use of a canon at the fourth, and the second, a gavotte, features a canon at the second. The third movement exhibits a canon at the third, and in the final gigue, the canon is in contrary motion. That was an electronic etude written in 21-note equal tuning. 23-note equal tuning is a particular challenge since it contains neither diatonic configurations nor any chromatic structures in common with any of the other tunings of this study. But it does contain an intriguing arrangement of the 2 different pentatonic modes of Java and Bali, known as Pelog and Slendro. These modes have a markedly different character, and neither can be realistically approximated in 12-note tuning. Essentially, the etude we are about to hear alternates the 2 modes with occasional chromatic modulations and frequent addition of 2 dissonant notes. We have just heard a microtonal etude composed for 23-note equal tuning, played by electronic music media. 13-note equal tuning is the most alien tuning of all, and is so dissonant that no 3-note combination sounds like a major or minor triad. But even this tuning contains a strange mode whose character is best described as sub-minor. The first 4 bars of the following etude are an arrangement of this mode into consecutive thirds, and this recurs later in 2 transposed variations. The rest is made essentially of chromatic resolutions of complex altered chords. You have just heard an electronic etude written for the equal tuning of 13 notes. The equal tuning of 15 notes is one of the most fascinating of all. It contains triads which, although rougher than 12-note triads, are sufficiently well in tune to serve as a final harmony in cadences. But the major scale is very strange indeed, so much so that even the most common diatonic progressions are disturbing unless precautions are taken. However, the 15-note triads may be arranged into chromatic progressions that are truly different from anything we are accustomed to, and involve the division of an octave into 5 equal parts, only possible in those tunings where the number of notes is divisible by 5. The etude you are about to hear makes extensive use of triads placed over this division in various different arrangements. You have just heard an electronic microtonal etude written in 15-note equal tuning. 17-note equal tuning has much in common with 12-note tuning in that each contains diatonic scales of 5 equal major seconds and 2 equal minor seconds. In 17-note tuning, each major second spans 3 chromatic degrees rather than 2 as in the case of 12-note tuning, and each minor second spans 1 chromatic degree. But the 17-note triads are very discordant due to their large major thirds, and so the fundamental consonant harmony of the tuning is a minor triad with an added minor seventh. The scale is very good due to the relatively small minor second, and the minor seventh chords may serve as tonics in the Dorian, Phrygian, and Aeolian modes. The following etude consists largely of passages in these modes connected by chromatic modulations unique to 17-note tuning. The microtonal etude you have just heard was composed for the equal tuning of 17 notes. 22-note equal tuning contains triads that are very smooth, in some respects perhaps a bit more so than those of 12-note tuning. But there is a price to be paid for the good triads, and that is that the scale is quite noticeably out of tune, and this in turn sharply restricts the diatonic vocabulary of the tuning. There are also very concordant versions of dominant sevenths, augmented sixths, and other altered chords which may be arranged into fascinating chromatic progressions. Structurally, the next etude is a fugue with 2 subjects, the first diatonic and the second chromatic. Toward the end, both are combined in 3 different harmonizations featuring invertible counterpoint. The composition you just heard was an electronic etude written in 22-note equal tuning. The familiar quarter tone tuning of 24 notes is actually one of the most difficult to deal with in a practical situation. Without exception, the notes in the cracks make extreme discords with the other notes, and there are only a very few satisfactory harmonies that combine the two. The 2 intertwined sets of 12 notes may be alternated with good effect, and the etude to be played next largely makes use of that property. Formally, it is a passacaglia in which the theme is heard first 5 times in the bass, with a new part added at each new variation. The last 3 variations place the theme in successively higher registers. That was an electronic etude for 24-note equal tuning. The very discordant equal tuning of 14 notes contains 2 highly contrasting modal arrangements. One is the division of an octave into 7 equal parts, sounding like a diatonic scale in which there are no distinctions of major or minor. The other is a combination of 2 differently tuned diminished seventh chords. The next etude alternates 2 themes, one in each of the modes, in a highly syncopated idiom. You have just heard an electronic microtonal composition written in 14-note equal tuning. The modal arrangements of 20-note equal tuning are very complex and have their origin in the equal divisions of an octave into 4 and 5 parts. Triads are very bad, and the most consonant harmony that can be found is a minor triad with an added major sixth, along with its inversions. This is the main harmonic unit of the etude we'll hear next, which also makes use melodically of the division of an octave into 5 equal parts. That was an electronic etude written in 20-note equal tuning. 19-note equal tuning contains diatonic scales in which the major second spans 3 chromatic degrees and the minor second 2. The triads are smooth, but the scale is slightly out of tune in that the leading tone seems low with respect to the tonic. Diatonic behavior is virtually identical to that associated with 12-note tuning. Chromatic behavior is very different. The perfect fourth is divisible into 2 equal parts, and an augmented sixth and a diminished seventh are the same in sound. The etude is in sonata form, where the first theme is diatonic and the second is chromatic. The development modulates entirely around the circle of 19/5, and a coda is appended that makes use of both diatonic and chromatic elements. You have just heard a composition written in 19-note equal tuning, the final piece of a set of 12 microtonal etudes for electronic music media. These realizations were made at Sound 80, Minneapolis, on a Polyfusion synthesizer and a 24-track master tape. In addition, other tone-shaping devices, both electronic and acoustical, were used. I played the Polyfusion keyboard, Roger Dumas was the programmer, and Scott Rivard was the recording engineer. These etudes are illustrations of a research project funded by the National Endowment for the Humanities in conjunction with Webster College, St. Louis. For a number of years, Webster College has been in the forefront of activities promoting interest and research in the basic principles of music theory.